Hello everyone. So in this session, let's talk about what is constructor, what are different types of constructor, and constructing object on stack and heap, and what is member initialization list, and some of the interview questions. So let's understand what is a constructor. So constructor is a special type of function inside a class, okay, which is used to initialize the data members of that class. Let's take an example. Class person. Okay, let's say you have two data members. One is age of the person, and the one is name of the person. So I need to include few header files. I need to include string class because I'm using string. I need to include namespace std because string is in namespace std. Okay, so this is my simple class. Let's say inside main, if I want to create an object of this class, so will the constructor be called? Yes, constructor will be called, but it will call the default constructor. If we don't create any constructor by ourselves inside the class, compiler will generate constructor of the same. Okay, so compiler will generate all the different types of constructors: default constructor, copy constructor, and assignment operator. Okay, we'll discuss in detail later what are copy constructor and assignment operator. So let's concentrate on constructors. Okay, constructor will generate its own default constructor. Let's say I create a object of person. Okay, I create an object of person. So can I access these data members of this object? No, I cannot access because they are private. So now to access them, I need to have a member functions. Let's say I have written get age. Okay, this is the function. This will return integer, and this will return underscore age. Okay, I'll also write string get name. Okay, this will return underscore name. Now let's see what happens. So this object, I'll use this object and I'll try to print object dot get age. What will print? Let's see that. Also I will print cout object dot get name. So what will happen? Let's see this. C++ constructor constructor.cpp. Okay, it is having some garbage value inside the age, and for that name it is having null, so nothing is displayed. Why? Because these variables are not initialized anywhere. So these are the data members of this class person, but these are not initialized anywhere. So by default, constructor will have its own default constructor, but it is not initializing these values. Okay, in order to avoid this, what we have to do? We have to write our own constructor. Okay, so let's write default constructor. how to write a constructor? So it will start with the name of the class. Okay, it will be same as name of the class. It looks like a function and does not have any return value. Okay, so let's initialize this. So let's initialize underscore age equal to 20, underscore name equal to Phillips. Okay, now what is the output you expect? Now the output will be as expected. So the age will be 20, the name will be Phillips, right? Age is 20, name is Philip. So but what is the problem with this approach? So we are hard coding the age and the name here, but what we are avoiding one problem, it will not have a some garbage value, so it will have some valid values. So this is what we use for default constructor. So in the default constructor, it is always better to initialize with the default values of that data type. So for integer, default value is 0. For name, it is a string type. The default value is empty string. Okay, if I compile this, at least it will not print any garbage value. So that's the use of the default constructor. Okay, now let's write parameterized constructor. Okay, again it will start with the name of the class and it will take argument this time, int age string name. Okay, so now I will pass assign underscore age with the age, underscore name with the name. Now when you have this constructor, you can call this constructor using the while creating an object and passing the variables to that. Okay, so let's clear this. It will compile, it will still have. Now the default constructor is called, so let's print something so that we will know what constructor is being called. Default constructor. Okay, here parameterized constructor. Okay, you see default constructor is being called. So we are creating an object on the stack. Okay, this is a stack object. When we are creating an object on the stack, so constructor of this object is called depending upon how you create an object. In this case, it will call the default constructor because we are not passing any arguments to the constructor. So now how to pass the argument to the constructor? Let's say we want to pass the argument to the constructor. So I want to pass age as 20, name as Phillips. You see, now it is calling parameterized constructor, the second one, and it is taking value 20 and Phillips. So what is happening in the background? So when you call this, when you create an object of person and passing these values, so while creating this object itself, it will initialize these variables in the class. So what is a class? Class is basically a class is basically a skeleton for an object. Okay, so when you create an object, memory will be allocated for this class Okay, in this case for age and name, and for this age and name you are assigning a value of 20 and Phillips, and you call this constructor. Okay, that's what it means. Now uh, okay, so these are the two types of constructor. So you can also have any other number of arguments. You can have any other default arguments, like another argument string id, so you can set it to by default null. This is also possible. This will also call parameterized constructor. Okay, so even though you don't pass it, so it will still work because it is a default argument. Okay, so you can create a constructor, n number of constructor with a different parameters as well. Okay, so these are the different types of constructor. Now let's talk about, we saw how we construct the object on the stack. So let's talk about how we construct the object on the heap. So when you say heap, so we have to allocate memory dynamically, right? So how do we do that? So let's say we're creating a person. Okay, we are calling new person. So with this what happens, it will construct a object on the heap, and here it will call the again default constructor because we are not passing any arguments. So let's try to print this. Okay, when the object is on heap, means it's a pointer. How do we dereference it? We dereference it this arrow operator. So if the object is on stack, we can get the member variables using the dot operator. If the object is a pointer, we can get the members with the arrow operator. Okay, you can see here it is calling default constructor in the second case. So now how do we call the parameterized constructor using the heap? Okay, let's pass arguments here. So I'm passing these arguments. Let's compile it again. You see here parameterized constructor is called again, and the value what we are passing is 30 and maxwell that is being printed. Okay, that's what we are trying to retrieve here. So this is how constructors are created. So if we don't write any of the constructor, compiler will generate one. But if we have data members like this, it is better to initialize the data members by writing of own constructor. So good practice to write of own constructor. If you don't write of own constructor, it will not give compiler error, but it will not yield you the desired behavior. Now let's say you don't write this default constructor. Okay, this is the question that can be asked in the interview. Let's say you don't write your default constructor. What will happen? This code will compile. Yes, it will compile because in both the cases we are calling the parameterized constructor. Yes, it is able to compile. Now let's say I don't pass these two arguments. What will happen? It is failing because request for member get age in object which is of non-class type person. So person object, you cannot construct a person object without passing any arguments because you have created only the parameterized constructor. When you don't write any of the constructor, then compiler will generate default constructor. That time you will be able to create object like this. But if even if you write a single constructor, like parameterized constructor like this, compiler will not generate default constructor for you. If you want it, you have to write it. Okay, so this is a way, another way how you can restrict user to create an object without age and name. So it does not make any sense, right? So person creating an object of a person without having age and name. So these are the mandatory parameters, right? For any person it will have a age and name. If you want, you can add any other parameters also. Okay, color of the person or any other things, if you want, we can make it mandatory, but I am taking this example of these two. Okay, if you want to restrict users to create an object of a person without age and name, we can do this. You don't write the default constructor, you just write the parameterized constructor and have the arguments of the mandatory types. Okay, so this is very important. This can be asked in the interview. So what will happen if you don't write your default constructor and if you have only parameterized constructor? So if you create an object without the parameters passed to it, so what will happen? This will result into a compilation error. Okay, now same is the case with this also. So if you want to see this as well, you can see that no matching for function equal to person. Okay, new person. So there is no matching function with the default constructor. Okay, you need to provide the argument, then only it will work. Okay, so this is about constructors.